think at heart I'm still a hippie. You know, maybe I'm a rich hippie, but I'm still a hippie, and I've never really worked hard at manipulating my career into one area or another area. It just seems like, and then also being a religious person, it just seems like the hand of God all my life was just kind of directing me here, whether I wanted to go or not. Because there's times in my life where I didn't want to do this. I wanted to still be on stage playing. Music was something we were brought up to just have a love for. It was always around the house. There was always an instrument somewhere to play. There was always someone to play with you, and a lot of people that have cared to know anything about me know a lot of this. So I'm kind of giving you the Reader's Digest's Cliff Notes version. But yeah, I was lucky. I played with a lot of big bands. I played with the Four Tops, the Supremes, when I was early teens, and played with some of the guys in Skynyrd, which led to a little stint with them after the plane crash. So it was a neat time. It was a good learning experience, because what I'm doing now in terms of mixing, it showed you how music can affect and really move people. So when you're sitting in a room like I'm sitting now, and you're doing a mix, you can mix it technically, or you can expect to come out of those speakers the things that move you like they moved you back then. And that's a good goal when you're mixing. And one of the things I like about Waves plugins is it gives you that ability to go beyond and transcend what you're given, and to actually incorporate some of those feelings. You know, like there's pieces of equipment in the analog domain and the hardware domain that just have, they're just kind of infused with the musicality. I don't know if it's because of the personality of the owners, but I'm guessing that a lot of the Waves, or all of the Waves products, are infused with the personalities of the owners, and that's why they have that ability, I think, to allow you to transcend what you're given. When I say transcend what you're given, like you're looking at a piece of this console, we've got a collection of drums and keyboards and instruments and vocals, and my job is to just make that sound good, be able to hear all of it, be able to recreate what the producer had in mind, the person that wrote the song had in mind when they originally conceived of the song. And at that point, really your job is done. But most of us that do this, that come from a musical background, we try to take it another level and make that touch you in some way. You can't do it with every song. It's just not possible, but it's worth the effort. And a lot of times you succeed, you know. And that's what's really fulfilling, to be able to be a part. I can't take credit for it, but I can be a part of something bigger than what I'm given. You know, like there's songs that every human being, I don't care where they are, will hear, and it just evokes a rush of feelings and emotions. And in some small way, I think that's part of the contributions of what I do for a living. Beautiful, Christina Aguilera. When I first started that mix, I was sitting there thinking, you know what? People are going to really realize I'm the world's greatest mixer when they hear this. And I'm thinking, man, this is amazing. This is really good. What an incredible song, an incredible performance, and what an incredible mix. Started listening to it, came back to it a little while later, and I realized that it's completely wrong. I realized that what we were trying to sell there was this incredible melody and lyric, and couple that with one of the great singers of our generation. And all I'm sitting there doing is trying to get a great mix out of it. And so when I tucked my ego aside, I rolled some high end off the piano, and Linda Perry and I we decided to make it sound like Imagine, John Lennon. And so I had to kind of lo-fi everything, In other words, I had made it sound too good to the point to where the mix was overshadowing this wonderful performance and song. And now one of the things that I'm proud of, and it's an odd pride, but you couldn't tell me if there's live drums or programmed drums, if there's an acoustic guitar in that song, and you've heard that song a million times. All you remember is, damn, that bitch can sing. And wow, what an incredibly powerful song. So the essence of that song was to remove my ego as a mixer from it. And I can't think of a greater example than that, because everything in our bodies wants to make us, I won't necessarily say show off as a mixer, but you want it to come out of those speakers and just have your compatriots go, wow, ooh, Dave nailed that one. But when I did that, I'd have to play it for you just so you can hear how funny it is. I mean, it's silly. But how many times do we do that in a creative domain where our egos force us to inflict our own personalities onto something which actually need nothing. They're great the way they are, and that's the biggest stumbling block I see. It's a difficult time to break into the industry, but I can highly recommend my job. If you want no life, if you want no social life, if you want your dog to bark at you because you're a total stranger when you come home at night, and your child to ask her mother, who's this guy hanging out this weekend with us? If you enjoy all of those things, then mixing might be for you. It takes a total commitment, so but the rewards are incredibly great. In terms of it's a lot like a doctor that saves a patient. Sometimes you just feel good about your profession. When the first synthesizer came out, everybody huddled around it, and the guy plays a string note, and everybody in the room goes, "That doesn't sound like a violin." And I'm going, "I know, that's great, isn't it? I've got a violin. Give me something that doesn't exist." That's what I'd love to hear from a synthesizer. And pretty much everybody heard drum machines, and they're like, "That doesn't sound like a drummer." And I'm going, "I know, that's great, isn't it?" And so I made up this little saying just to kind of piss people off. You can't say piss in a Waves interview. Okay, just to upset people, I made up this little saying: It's better to sound new than sound good. And what that means is, if everybody on the radio's got live strings and real drummers, come in there with a synthesizer and a drum machine, and you're going to take the radio over, which is basically what happened. And music was better for it because now we were able to use all 52 cards in the deck. Prior to synthesis in the digital domain, we only had half the cards in the deck. One of the things that drew me to Waves was they didn't look like the analog equivalents. They didn't sound like the analog equivalents. They allowed me to do things I couldn't do in the analog world. And I think that's a basic tenet of the company is to invent new things. One little quick piece of history. Roland decided to make a drum machine that was kind of inexpensive, and so they didn't want to spend a lot of money on it. And there was this little Japanese guy over in the corner, bright kid, and they said, go make a drum machine. So he goes in the corner. He didn't know what drums were, apparently. Had never heard them or paid attention. So he goes in his little corner by himself, and he makes this thing that became the 808. Doesn't sound anything remotely like anything you've ever heard that's anywhere near a drum kit. Like the cowbell, who knows what the hell that is? And the kick is just a sine wave, and the snare is just awful. But those are probably the most heard drum sounds on the planet. If you've been exposed to music on any level, you've heard about the 808 kick drum. It's just if you've not heard it and you're listening to this, it's just a poof. I mean, it's just a sine wave. There's really not much to it. But my point is this: when our industry finally gives that little guy that's never been in a studio, doesn't know what any of this stuff is, and says, go make up something cool. And that little kid comes back with something that allows me to psychoacoustically change a sound, and that sound makes you feel something you've never felt before, or whatever. That's when it's going to really get exciting, you know? I think there's different ways to apply the rule of thirds to the audio world. Like in the visual world, we like to see our paintings, our photographs. We don't like to see the horizon in the middle of the photograph. We like to see it a third from the top or a third from the bottom. We don't like to see our subject eyes right in the center of the shot. We like to see it on the third or a third. So that for those of you that aren't familiar with that concept, basically just divide your piece of paper or your canvas or your whatever into equal thirds horizontally and vertically, and that's called the rule of thirds. I'm not going to give it away. Let's leave something for you guys to figure out yourselves, but figure out how that applies to the audio world, mixing world. Find my email address on the internet and email me. Let's get a discussion going about that, because I think that's a good thing to explore. And I think if I give you the secret right off the bat, what's the point? You know, I might as well just drop by your house and do your mixes for you. If you look at the history of creativity in any genre, whether it be music or painting or ceramics, ideas seem to grow quicker than the physical technology to produce them. And right now, I think we've got a lot of ideas, but right now the technology hasn't quite gotten there for these new ideas to manifest themselves. And I think we're on the verge in the next 2 or 3 years of a really great musical explosion. And I think it'll be a little bit outside of what we consider the current business model now. And I want to be ready for that, because I can't wait for that. That's going to be a wonderful time. It's going to be heavily plug-in driven, DAW driven. We talk about in the box. It's going to be seriously in the box, you know, and it might even be in the boxes. Who knows? Max Bass is just one of those plug-ins where there's not a lot of knobs. And actually, there's a couple of knobs on there. I don't know what the hell they do, but I move them around and they sound good. But that's a very useful plug-in to what I find a use I love about it is sometimes I'll get a bass part that's almost a sine wave. And what that means is there's not a lot of harmonic content. So you put it on your big speakers, and man, you're rattling everything in the room. You're going, wow, I've reached the pinnacle of low endness. And then you put it on your smaller speakers like the NS10s, and you cannot hear it at all. So imagine what's going to happen if that song gets played on TV. So up comes Max Bass. You can actually get that low sine wave to have a harmonic component that's in tune, that you can hear it on the small speakers. I use it a lot for that. So it gives you the best of both worlds. You're still fat and sine wavy on the big speakers like the producer conceived it, but when you go to the little speakers, you can still hear it. We've got this little joke that we use. We've got 2-track tape machines that we print to, although less now than before, and those have these little 3-inch speakers that are mono, that are just used as utilitarian. But sometimes we'll monitor through those speakers in mono just to see if our mix is going to sound good on TV. We refer to it as listening to it on prison radio, and we'll listen to the mix on that. And man, people just freak out when they can hear their bass on that. When they haven't heard it on anything that small since they conceived the song. So Max Bass that's a great use for that plug-in. Great plug-in. I think if anybody that's been in this business more than a year already knows L1, it's just a meat and potatoes. If you're familiar with old gear, it's like an LA2A. It's just a couple of knobs and just a workhorse. I like it. Sometimes I'll put it after a regular compressor. So I have my regular compressor do the musical things, like kind of keep my vocalist in my face. And then I'll drop an L1 after that compressor just as a final brick wall, to keep that vocalist in check a little bit. I do that a lot for lead vocals, and it gives a very musical extra limit to the compressor above, and you really hear neither one. But working in conjunction like that, they tend to work really well together. Like use a Renaissance for your first one, and then maybe only a 3-to-1, 4-to-1 ratio, something real small, and don't knock off more than about 3 or 4 dB, and then put the L1 after that to catch the big stuff. And don't be afraid. One thing we've forgotten to say, and I'm glad I thought about this, don't be afraid to automate anything on all these plugins. Like, I automate my compressors a lot because I'll have them set right for the verse, but here comes the vamp and they're screaming their heads off. Just automate it. Just automate everything. I automate damn near everything on every plugin I use, particularly EQs and flangers. Don't be afraid to automate anything. That's one of the great tools we have available to us now that's underutilized, is the automation of compressors. And you can really, especially when you start, like I love to combine, I love to chain effects, like I've already kind of mentioned. As you start automating that stuff, it's just the sky's the limit. A lot of those things, I think I've said somewhere before. I used to race motorcycles, and my motorcycle was a dirt bike, weighed about 200 pounds, and we would spend any amount of effort and money to get rid of half a pound of weight. And people used to ask me, "Oh, that's just so stupid. Can you feel a half a pound?" I go, "Of course you can't. But if you do that 20 times, you've now decreased the weight of the bike by 5%, So you can feel that. You can feel 10 pounds. And mixing is a lot like that. If you just do a little automation here, a little plug in there, you've only lost half a pound, and you're not going to feel that. But man, you do that 40 or 50 times, and now you've got a significant difference in your mix. You've got a significant difference in the weight on that dirt bike. So don't think of a lot of these things and concepts as in and of itself. Think of it as combined part of a bigger whole, and then you can really start making a difference to your mixes at home, whether you're working at the level I'm working at, or Lord knows if you're working at this level, and you're buying this tape, you're hurting anyway. But working at home, you can, and I'm telling you this sincerely and honestly from my heart, you can do just as good a mixes working at your home as I can here. It just takes a few years of trying and being blessed with good taste, and figuring out what 14-year-old girls want to hear on the radio. But it's totally possible to do. I'll give you an example. There was a song called Miss Independent, Kelly Clarkson. There's not a single outboard piece of gear on that mix. I mixed it at Rhett Lawrence's house. An engineer named Steve McMillan and I worked on that song together, and that's all in the box. And I'm telling you, that mix sounds great on radio. So you can do it at home. You don't need all of this. This is fun and it's cool. I'd much rather have it than not have it, but it can be done at home. It just takes an effort. L3 represents a whole new concept in plugins. It's a smart plugin. It actually goes and looks ahead in the mix and says, okay, look, this bass note's getting a little out of control here. It's about to come up. How do you want me to deal with that? And those guys are just off the hook coming up with stuff like that. Hopefully that's the future, and I can't see how it wouldn't be. Plugins that are smart, that think. Q-Clone, I've seen it, and I think that's going to be a very unique, incredible thing. That's a good concept because it allows you to own a lot of vintage stuff with a small amount of cash outlay. The reason I'm probably not as excited about it as I should is because I got all the vintage stuff. But if I didn't, that would be one of the first pieces of equipment I would buy. But the L3, that's just pure genius, and I think that represents the future of our industry. I mean, reverbs that can think, EQs that can think. In a way, if you automate the side chain on C1SC, you've got a smart plug-in, So it's just a matter of time before the guys at Waves, start doing more stuff like that because, like I say, I think that is the future. And in fact, I hope it is. But yeah, that's an incredible plug-in. Something to keep in mind, there's two ways to listen to what I'm saying and what anyone says in terms of their opinions about music and how to create it and how to do it. You can listen to the specifics that they say and go and try those and apply those to your skill set. And that's cool, that's good. But when you hear interviews like this or read them, try to philosophically understand what caused that person to want to try that particular thing or do that and incorporate those in your skill set. Because it's music, we sometimes think that we can hear something and immediately apply it and immediately get the same results. That can be the case, but more often than not, you need to experiment. You need to try these things that you hear other engineers say, and it's not going to give you instant results the way it does us. It seems simple, and I'm not sure I can explain why that is. I just know when I was learning and when I was coming along, there was a magazine called REP, Recording Engineer Producer. I would devour that thing, and I'd try everything these guys said, and my mixes still sucked. And so as you're listening to this and I'm saying particular things, think of it on two levels. Think of it as, okay, I'm going to go try that C1SC and let me see what it does. If it doesn't do exactly what you think it should do, don't give up. Keep working on it. And as you're working on it, you're going to find that not only will you be able to get it to do what I get it to do, but you'll do it better, and you'll take the whole process of mixing to another level. If you build your career solely based on what you read and hear, you're just going to be a carbon copy, and right now carbon copies aren't getting paid that much, nor are they really getting hired that much. So try to find a spot within the industry that's uniquely you, uniquely yourself, and you'll go through what I went through. There'll be times when early part of your career people go, man, I need you to do a mix. Can you make it sound like, and then plug in Flavor of the Month mixer. That used to torture me. Now people ask me to sound like myself, which sometimes is an equal torture, but try to find a spot within the industry where the competition isn't as great and start there.